Will Pulsex or Pulsechain perform better? When I search this, there are multiple videos, multiple Reddit posts, articles here that come up comparing Pulsex and Pulsechain. And none of these compare the data behind these the way we do in this video. They have conjecture, which is just opinion about what they think. Everybody's got an opinion. But what if I just presented you the data and then allowed you to come to your own conclusions? We take a look at Google search volume, the largest search engine in the world, to see what people are actually searching for, not just conjecture. What are people actually doing? You know the saying, like, don't do as I say, like, watch what I do, right? My actions speak louder than words, right? Opinion versus people's actual actions. The second largest search engine, YouTube search volume, we take a look at their website. Are more people going to pulsex.com to get information? Or more people going to pulsechain.com to get information? Which site is more popular? Because that's going to give us an indicator of people's actual actions. Same thing with hashtag usage on TikTok. Same thing with hashtag usage on Instagram. Same thing with the views on YouTube. Which Pulsechain or Pulsex is getting more views? What content creators are putting out more content around Pulse or Pulsex? Which Twitter is growing faster? Which Telegram is growing faster? We put all this together so that it's not just somebody's opinion on, an article or something like that, or on Reddit or in another YouTube video. And put it into one spreadsheet so we can take a look at this very macro level data to get a better understanding of what people are actually doing, to see if that gives us any indicators of what might perform better, right? We're going to talk about it in this video. But first, if this is your first time here, what's good? My name is Sam, and for those of you who are returning, it's good to freaking see you. By the way, if you're returning, you might as well share the video if you like it. You might as well share it with somebody else you might think will like it. And anybody who wants to support the channel, you can check out the links down below. So I know I'm looking forward to these coming out. Hopefully you are as well. I'm actually going to be doing something with refinancing my property instead of buying another rental property, putting money into Hex and Pulsex and Pulse, right? So you can check out that video on how I can actually use cryptocurrency to pay off my mortgage. There's a video or two before this one. But what we're going to first do is take a look at all the different pieces that we looked at to compare from a macro level data. Then we're going to get into Google Trends, and then we're going to compile them all into one spot. So Telegram, which Telegram is bigger and which one is growing faster? Pulsex, Pulsechain. This is a site that aggregates social profiles, so you can compare different data. We're using the Twitter profile from Pulsex here as an example, but and we also pulled up Pulsechain, obviously. And we took a look at the size of their profile, as well as how many followers are they gaining on average per day, right? This is people's actual actions going to their profile and pressing follow, right? Next, we took a look at YouTube. So this one is super interesting. I like this one. So this is Pulsechain. And then what we did is we did today, videos, and relevance, right, for the filters. And then we counted the number of videos published in the last 24 hours for Pulse or Pulsex to see what people are actually putting their time and effort into. When you're watching this video, you may not be aware, but it takes me time to actually prep to do this video, like to pull up all these tabs, but also to go through and pull up any other sources of information that I might use and then put it into a spreadsheet, right? You can make things grow by investing time into them or an effort, or investing money into them, right? And by creators actually putting out content around one or the other, right, we get to see which direction people are putting their time and their money into, right, to see which one is growing. And we compare those. We also took a look at, say, Pulsechain over the last 30 days. But now we take a look at the number of views. So this is, one is the creator behind them. What are they putting their time and effort into over a 24-hour period? And then what are people actually consuming over the last 30 days? And in order to be counted in either one of these categories, Pulsex or Pulsechain or Pulse or PLSX or their logo had to be in the title and or the thumbnail to be counted, right? On Instagram, because this is telling us what people are actually consuming. The other one is telling us what creators are actually putting out. Over here on Instagram is the hashtag usage for Pulsechain versus Pulsex and the growth of that. Now, this was also super fascinating. This is Pulsechain hashtag on TikTok. Right, so TikTok's videos only. So this is 12.3 million views. 12.3 million views. So it's a little bit different than the hashtags over here, right? Because you're like, oh, hashtags over here. It's the same thing. It's a hashtag over here. However, it's not. This is pictures primarily, right? You can see right here, a bunch of these are, this one here is it looks like probably somebody's doing like an NFT type thing or whatever, right? And this is just a post. Where this tells us how many people actually viewed the hashtag. Big difference, right? This doesn't give us impressions or anything like that or something close to impressions. This is just the number of posts that use that hashtag. And the next, and then, by the way, we also have another video coming out on this comparing Pulsex with Pancake Swap and Uniswap in terms of which the people are going to their website. How does Pulsex's website compare to these other DEXs, right? Because that's going to be an interesting one when that comes out. So make sure you subscribe and press the bell notification so you get notified when that one comes out. Because I was just looking at the data before this one. Very interesting. Very interesting. Pancake Swap is also learning more about that. Very interesting. All right, so this is a Amazon company. This is Alexa.com, and they rank websites. So remember, there's millions and millions of websites, and they rank them, say, on the estimated traffic, bounce rate, how many pages they view, etc. for their website. When we look at this, we look at two things. Well, we're going to look at three here just because we have it up, but we look at the global ranking. So this is Pulsechain, 33,000, right? And the ranking in the United States, 14,539, right? But interesting thing here for Pulsechain is we see an upward trend, right? They started out at 32,000. They went all the way up to 27,000, right? So they gained 4,000 spots or 5,000 spots roughly. And then we see this precipitous drop off, which is like, I'm going over the cliff. And they've been losing. So they went from 27 down to 33. And so they've lost 6,000 spots globally. That's not good, right? But that might change. But we also compare this to Pulsex, Pulsechain, right? And that's what the video between Uniswap and Pulsex are going to do. Now here, let me make sure you guys can actually see this. So this is Google Trends. If I pull this up here, you guys should be able to see, I think. Yes. Okay. Google Trends. This is worldwide over the last 12 months on the web. Remember, Google's the largest search engine in the world. So when you're trying to get an indicator of interest on something, you can utilize this to contrast relative to something else, as in this case, Pulsex. But you can also use it to gauge interest growth over time. If the growth of the interest in terms of what people are actually punching into their keyboards or on their phones to look for is growing over time, then you're going to see like that upward trend or something thereabouts. So in this case, we're contrasting them and looking for that. Pulsex, Pulsechain over the last 12 months worldwide. And we get to see, right, pretty obvious that Pulsechain is going to be more popular before Pulsex comes out. No shit, right? When Pulsex drops, you get to see that it's sustained above Pulsechain most of the time, except for touched here, and it looks like it's closing in that gap here. One way that I like to check to see how much more accurate this is, I go into the 90-day view when I do these, just because I'm curious to understand. I want to understand. The reason I do these videos is because I'm curious. Yes, I like making content, and I do like sharing thoughts so that people who are intelligent and thoughtful can have a different opinion, can be like, leave it down below in the comments and be like, hey, have you thought about using this? Or hey, you missed this, right? And then they can put it down below in the comments. And then I get to learn even more. So this is, the red is Pulsex and the blue is Pulsechain. We get to see a clear trend down here, right? If I pull this up, all right. The red is Pulsex. For about 2/3 of this 90-day period, we see a trend down in Pulsex, where if you look at Pulsechain, let's move this back over here. For Pulsechain, it's been, you know, pretty continuous. It dropped down a little bit, but then it started to trend back up here, right? So you did see a drop similar time that Pulsex was dropping at the lowest point here. So it doesn't, you know, necessarily tell us anything specific here. But another indicator is YouTube search volume, because remember, YouTube is the largest search engine, or the second largest search engine globally. And this is a different story than we saw with Google. On Google, remember, they touched here at this point, and they touched over here. On YouTube, that's not the case. On YouTube, Pulsex is more popular. You can see that across the board. It's been above the search volume interest for Pulsechain across the board. However, you do see a trend up here in Pulsechain over this last month or so. Let's actually go into the 90-day view and see what story that tells us. So again, the average number of searches over the last 90 days is 60. And this is not like 61 searches. This is the relative to a peak, right? So 61 versus 35. So nearly 2 to 1, meaning for every, 2 to 3, right? So for every 2 searches of Pulsechain, there's 3 searches of Pulsex. Okay. Let's take another screenshot of this bad boy and see if we notice anything, right? So we got the Pulsechain here, right? Seems to be trending up a little bit over the last 90 days. Pulsex is, we had a big dip there, but that was the same dip that we saw on the Google search volume, right? Nothing in particular there. It just looks like a regular, like, up and down, nothing crazy. So can't exactly tell what is going on there, but we can see that Pulsex is definitely more popular. Maybe it's just because the name, Pulsex, has more of like a in-your-face Pulsex versus Pulsechain for people, right? And Pulsex, right, has sex in the word, so maybe people, right? Like, people are stupid, right? Very simple. So that could easily be a thing of it, right? Well, let's take all this data and put it together into this sheet here. So I've been able to track this over time. Let's see if I can make it a little bit bigger here, so you guys can see it a little bit better. There we go. So when we take a look at this, since I started tracking this, we get to see across the board, Telegram goes to Pulsechain. But if we take a look at the difference to see which is actually growing faster, I think that tells a different story. We get to see that Pulsex's Telegram group is growing about 3 times as fast. So even though Pulse Telegram group is bigger, the Pulsex group is growing 3 times faster. So interesting, right? When we come over to Twitter, we have 2 factors we're taking a look at. And I think we're going to actually add in something else here. Too bad they don't tell us the average number of likes or retweets per tweet that is put out. Well, they don't give us that information, because that would be interesting to get an idea of the engagement with something, right? Well, on Twitter, the average number of new followers per day is 139 for Pulse and 154. So this is not a good trend. This is a downward trend for Pulsex, even though Pulsex is still ahead. What do you think? Do you think Pulsex is going to remain ahead on Twitter? Do you think they're going to continue to have just as many followers gained per day as Pulse? I don't know. For the last 3 weeks, Pulse has been gaining a increase in the number of followers per day from 126 to 123, 139, where Pulsex has seen a decrease, right, 270 down to 154. Every single week I've been tracking this, they've been dropping. The drops don't seem to be as dramatic, right? From 70 to 44, from 44 to 97, right? Like these are pretty big drops, and it's not dropping as quickly, right? Or maybe they'll level out. You know, it'll be interesting to see. Now, unlike Telegram, if you look at Pulse, the Twitter size, the number of followers on Twitter, Pulse has a lot more, right? But remember, the Pulse community has been around for longer, so you would expect that to be the case, and you'd expect that to be the case over here. You just may not expect that Pulsex is growing faster, right? Because this came out in July or June of last year, where this came out 4 months ago or something, right? So you wouldn't think that. Although it is interesting to see that Pulse is growing faster on Twitter, while Telegram Pulsex is growing faster. That's interesting. Maybe that is because people are more interested in getting help around Pulsex, right? Because you're going to be using Pulsex more, at least right off the bat, you will be. So that's interesting. On YouTube, so this is again interesting because Pulsex was winning in terms of views. So this is, if we come back over here for a moment and we look at this, we looked at the number of views, right? And we counted that up for the top 10 videos. So the top 10 videos, there was 195,000 views for Pulse X and 267 for Pulse. So Pulse has been winning for the last 2 weeks, and their lead has actually increased, whereas the number of views for Pulsex has actually decreased, right? So they're growing, Pulse is growing, Pulsex is decreasing, right? So we see some interesting things here that weren't evident 2 weeks ago, right? That looks like Pulsex, the interest in Pulsex is growing. The engagement around Pulsex is growing. Also interesting is the number of people who are creating content. So these are the people who are investing their time and their money into creating videos and publishing them on YouTube. We see a drop in both of them, a bigger drop in Pulsex, but there was 31 people who created videos or multiple videos, and then there was 22 with Pulsex in the title or thumbnail, right? So that's interesting. Both of those are dropping here, so you can't tell the difference. But again, Pulsex is dropping by less, right? Pulsex is growing here. Pulsex is growing faster here. It's been a drop here in Pulsex. The Pulsex is growing fastest on Telegram, right? But all these other ones are pointing towards Pulse. On Instagram, we have also a bigger growth rate in the hashtag usage for Pulsex. I'm sorry, Pulsechain, which is the 156. But the total number of hashtags on Instagram is greater for Pulsex. So that's interesting, right? But again, we have another category in terms of growth that is going to Pulse. The total number of views on videos, this is TikTok we're looking at. This is relatively new. We've been tracking it for three weeks. Has gone up by 1 million in just 3 weeks. The number of views for the hashtag Pulsex has gone up by 1 million views, right? From 3 million to 4 million. For Pulsechain, it's gone up by 1.1 million views. Right? So they're growing faster, the views on TikTok, right? So this is a good indicator that there's more interest, right? Because what's going to drive, even if I personally believe Pulsex is better structured for price performance, if there's more demand for Pulsex, that's what matters, right? The number of people over time, Pulsex can win, right? But it's looking at this way that there's far more interest in Pulse than there is in Pulsex. I mean, it's similar, right, across the board, but there's a slight margin towards more growth or more attention or eyeballs or potential demand to Pulse than Pulsex. When we look at their website right here, we get to see that there's been losing ground since the end of March, right? So 3+ weeks now, Pulsechain has been losing ground. where Pulsex has also been losing ground, but just not by as much, right? Wait, let's see. 16, so 4 plus 3, 7 over here, and we have 7. So actually, no, they're losing about the same. They're losing about the same in terms of the popularity. In the United States, it is different though. So globally, they're losing ground in terms of their websites. In the United States, they're actually gaining ground, but they've been gaining ground for 1 month now, right? There was Pulsechain's website in the United States ranked on Alexa.com. They rank millions of sites. They were at 38,000th in the United States, and remember, there's millions of sites. This is why when we take a look at the Uniswap and PancakeSwap and Pulsex to understand where Pulsex is right now before it's even live will be interesting. But Pulsechain's website has been gaining. It went from 38th down to 14th over the last month in terms of people going to their website. That's a lot, right? That's big. From 38 down to 14, that's a big improvement. Even just from the last week to this week, it went from 16.5 down to 14.5. 2,000 spots. That's a lot. Pulsex, still more popular overall. So Pulsex's website is just more popular overall. But it could just be because if you look at this, right, like this is just a cleaner, simpler look to it than this, right? Like this is not as clean as simple as just this is, right? So when we come over here, we see from 29,000 to 12,000, still a massive increase in popularity. Like they're getting close to breaking the top 10,000 sites, right? Remember, there's so many websites. There's so many websites, and these two websites are getting close to being in the top 10,000 out of all the websites on Alexa.com. It would be interesting to see what happens because Alexa, you guys probably can't see it, but at the top, I won't be able to actually use their data after May 1st, I think, unless I pay for a subscription or something, or their site's just going away. So my thoughts on putting all this together, it definitely is interesting to see the gaining interest of Pulse. It looked like it might have been pointing the other direction about a month ago, and it has been shifting, right? So if the demand, the interest, the engagement around Pulse is increasing, that in my POV would be good for the price, right? Because if you have a increased interest in the company or whatever it is, that tends to lead to more sales, right? If you're talking about a product or service. So if you have that with Pulse, then that tends to increase demand. So this is going to be super interesting to see how this plays out. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts down below in the comments. If you found this video helpful, nobody else is doing this. Nobody else is doing this. So take a second, share this video. Appreciate you guys. And if you want to check out other links or Twitter or my Instagram or my other YouTube fitness related channel, you can check all those down below. Appreciate you guys, and I'll talk to you soon. Peace.